Welcome to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers with Linda Prio. Will it be possible to remain in my home as I age? Do I feel safe in my home? How do I figure out how much support I will need when my health needs start to change? What if I decide to move into a community instead? Which community will meet my needs now and in the future? Who will play a role in helping me with decision making? Do you ask yourself these same questions? Aging in Place Strategies and Answers can help you gain practical knowledge that will help you create your own Aging in Place roadmap. If you are already a care partner, a power of attorney, or in crisis mode with your Aging in Place strategy, you will learn what you need to know that you don't know. For over 20 years, I have been marketing Aging in Place services to clients and educating families and healthcare professionals in how to put aging in place strategies into place. When you utilize aging in place, you are allowed to choose where you want to live and make those decisions so that you can retain your quality of life. I want to welcome you all back to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers, and wanted to visit with you about, it was actually a talk given by Charles Mann, and it was done for a men's group in the DC area. And I did not know Charles Mann, but he is a former football player, and he is a 3-time Super Bowl champion and businessman. And he helped create the Good Samaritan Foundation with some of his former teammates. So he is a man on a mission. He was successful on the football team, on the football field, and then gathered some of his teammates to start this foundation to help others. And Charles found his strengths and passions, and he leaned into those. And he encouraged those of us that were listening to the talk to do the same thing. What are your strengths? What are your passions? What gets you up out of bed in the morning? What lights your fire? And then to lean into that. And so I was thinking of my guest today, Michelle Perry, and I know that she does the same thing. She's found a passion beyond her everyday 9-to-5 career, which you're going to hear about. But she's definitely somebody who uses her strengths and helps others. So, Michelle, just say hello to my listeners.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, Linda.
Oh, you're welcome. It is my delight to have you with us today. Now, Michelle has been working in the financial services industry since 2012. So if you do the math, you can figure out how many years that is. And she's been helping her clients live their best life to find what turns them on, what their passions are, what their strengths are, so that they have a meaningful and purpose-filled life, but also can achieve financial stability. Michelle works alongside her clients to get organized, to help build their portfolios, and to help them then meet specific goals. And she is really good about informing her clients about what they need to know, how the information that they're going to need to make a decision, and then allows them to make their decisions, and then for the future as well, how they're going to transfer the wealth they've acquired to future generations. As Michelle's been building this successful career, unfortunately, she experienced a personal loss during COVID-19. And I know this is going to resonate with many people. Listeners, that I work on in the health field, and so it was a tragedy. And so Michelle unfortunately lost her father during COVID-19 suddenly. She had also lost a good friend who lost her life in a car accident. Both sudden, both losses. And in both instances, a spouse was left behind trying to cope with a sudden loss and the grief that goes along with that, while also struggling with the business side of what this means, everything that comes after that. And believe me, there can be mountains of paperwork, and you can feel overwhelmed and stressed. Fortunately, if and remind me if I'm not right, Michelle, both people had made plans for transfers of assets. They had created what if plans, but stacks of paper started piling up and the to-do list started growing. So when Michelle saw this, she had a strong impulse to come alongside and help the process that they were going through, at least with the paperwork side and with the business side of life, be a little bit more tolerable. So, Michelle, I'd love for you to share more of this story and how this experience enabled you to take your strengths with what you're good at and to help widows and widowers who are now trying to go alone at this.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. So actually, even before 2020, I had the opportunity. Early in my career, I had gotten a phone call one day. A woman named Kathy had called me up and she said, Bobby told me to call you and you're going to help me. And I'm like, scrambling. I'm like, who's Bobby? Who are you? Like, I'm like doing reverse lookup on my computer. And I figured out I knew Bobby as Robert. He had worked at Boeing and I talked to him a couple times, but we had never worked together professionally. And so, I'm asking questions to Kathy and she's like, well, when can you get here? I need your help. And we set a time and she's like, Bobby was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and passed away quickly. And now I don't know what to do. There's just mail piling up and there's bills coming in and I don't know what's important and what's not important. And I could just feel like this anxiety. I was absorbing the anxiety. I'm like, okay, I'll be there in like tomorrow afternoon. So I get there and not kidding, there's like hundreds of pieces of mail. She had not gone through the mail since he had gotten diagnosed. And my eyes just kept darting to the mail, right?
Of course.
And so I knew I was out of my element. I had not experienced death in my family. My grandma lived to 98. Her sister lived to 103. She just passed a couple of years ago. So we hadn't really experienced death prematurely. Fortunately, I knew I was out of my element emotionally. But I could probably help with the mail. So I was like, okay, I could probably help here.
Yes,
But I
yes.
also realized she didn't want me to help with like market issues or investment issues. That was not on her radar at all. And I was, sensitive enough to realize that. So what I did do with her that day was just get rid of the junk mail, got the piles down into like action items. This can wait. And maybe like if her kids came into town, like, what's this, right? Like, I don't know everything.
Yes.
And then I ran to Michael's and got those photo boxes. And I'm like, when you get your mail and you don't know what to do with it, put it in here. So it wasn't just like scattered everywhere anymore.
Yes.
And so that became my niche. I started working with, I think Bowie does, Dr. Wolfelt comes every year, and I started learning about death and dying. I started like actually digging in because I'm like, there's a lot of women out there who experience this, who haven't been in charge of their finances, who lose their advocate. And that was because the partner passed, right? He had died. But they also, whether it's dementia or silver divorce, it's the same pattern. And really, they just want to know, am I secure? Do I have to go back to work? Am I going to be able to stay at my house? Like those questions are just constantly bouncing around in their brain. And that's what they need to know up front, right? Like those are the only questions they care about. They're mourning and they just need to get through that grief a little bit at the beginning, and no big decisions have to be made. So once I understood the process, and then as I've been in this career for a few years now, I was like, okay, now that I've been reactive, we need to start being proactive. And so then I developed, there was a person who I saw speak, Mark Zender, who had a book called 25 Documents You Need Before You Die. And that has become my passion project for the past dozen years. I was probably more lackadaisical about it until my dad passed. And even though he had a trust and we thought everything was taken care of, two things happened. One, when he was actually in the hospital, he thought he couldn't go on a ventilator because he had signed a medical power of attorney or
Health
living will that said,
directives.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm like, that's if you're brain dead. Like I'm like raising my voice at him. Like that's not how you want to, because of course that's COVID. You can't go to the hospital and all this
Of
is going on.
course.
And I'm
Of
like, that's
course.
if you're brain dead. Like you can go ahead and get on a ventilator if that's what you need. But it was too little, too late, and he ended up passing. And then he did have something that he inherited a piece of property from his brother, which was very generous of his brother, but we didn't get that put in probate. I didn't know about it till after he passed. And so, we still ended up having to go through probate during COVID, which was a nightmare. And it wasn't in, our living area. So we had to hire that out. And so it's just like all these things, if the more proactive you can be, the less burden it is for your family. So that's been my mission. And that's what I share with people now.
Yes. And so, for those of you that are listening, Bowie is a, funeral home um, who helps you pre plan and also helping you choose and understand the best way to plan and also to celebrate life. And they do offer education. And you said something very important that I just want to share with my listeners because I do talk about this on my podcast, Aging in Place Strategies and Answers. And my mother also had a do not resuscitate order, but I got a call. Of course, it always happens when you're out of town. So I was out of town. And so I knew she had a do not resuscitate order but she was having a GI bleed. And I thought, you know what? I said, ask my mother what she wants to do. And she said, I want to go to the hospital. So you can revoke your DNR immediately. It's patient choice always. And she advocated for herself. And I knew that was the best thing to do at that moment. It was also a learning curve just because the DNR was not at every hospital. And so while sometimes we think about our charts having everything and all the pieces of information, that wasn't. And so again, I had to go through that and learn that. And it's always when you're out of town and not prepared for that. So there's always going to be something. But this podcast really is about education and guidance. And then when you're working with professionals, you're going to get the information that you need so that you can make educated decision. And so if you're putting these things off because you're embarrassed to go and talk to somebody, you think that you are not going to understand what the professional's talking about, that you do not feel equipped to make that decision, that's okay. There should be no pressure to make that decision on the spot, right, Michelle?
Right.
And that's what a good professional does. So I just want you to know that there is no reason to put this off. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, and then you said silver divorce, just so that we know what we're talking about here. Silver divorce. Tell me, just give me a
What is that?
yeah. What is silver? I think I know, but I want you to share what it is. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Are you looking for resources on senior living? Check out guideforseniorliving.com for our free online senior resource guide to find senior housing, care, and community connections. Start searching now at guide number 4 seniorliving.com. That's guideforseniorliving.com to find the contact information for senior housing, care, and community connections.
Now let's return to the podcast.
Yes, unfortunately, we have divorces in the 55 plus age range. And I used to say divorce after 40 it's almost a lose-lose situation because it can be financially devastating for both parties. But
Yes.
55 plus is can also be equally devastating. But sometimes, so there's a couple options, there's even a newer version of this. And I don't know if you've heard the word or abbreviation LAT, living apart together.
Oh,
So
I did. I
sometimes,
heard
yeah,
something like that. Explain what that is.
so divorce is when you actually physically separate assets and dissolve the marriage. That living apart together it's almost financially devastating to the point where you can't afford to do that. So you stay legally married, but separate physically, and you live apart, but you are married still together. And it's crazy because financially it works better for the couple to stay financially together. And I'm not saying there's no judgment on my part, whatever works. And it's just a newer version of the
And,
past, right?
and that's what this podcast is all about, Michelle. Is just sharing information so people are aware and that there are options. And then professionals like you have heard of these things and really are helping people make good decisions because it is true. I know that there are a lot of affordable living communities in our area as well as throughout the U.S. And one of my first experiences was a woman who told me, she said, I am living in affordable living because my husband was ill and we spent out all the money on him. So, but many of the other situations were just like you discussed. They were silver divorces or divorces early in their careers. So let's get going, Michelle. In your stories, there were plans in place. So Kathy, who was married to Bobby, who Bobby told her to contact you, and in your father's case, there was plans in place. There were the what if,
Some
yeah, up to a certain point.
information.
But then like this, it changed. And so our goal today is to just share that professionals meet you at the place where you're at, whether it's in crisis mode or whether you're in a planning mode. But once you have things in place, Michelle told me, she said it's really good to have a discussion with whoever's involved and has been identified or who will be successor trustee and to have these conversations. So can you help us figure out a good way to start that conversation? Because my husband and I just redid our documents, and I know that I need to have a discussion with our kids so that they understand why we did what we did and how we did it, and that where that information is, because you just never know.
Yes, and a lot of times we anticipate it being uncomfortable or awkward or emotional, and it's not always. So I wouldn't go into the conversation assuming it's going to be this horrible, heavy conversation. We don't start with, here's my funeral arrangements and I want you to know. Like there's a softer way to do it. So in 10 words or less, I always say, start with softballs, don't start with the burial plan. And so, what are softballs, right? So how do we start that? So, I already mentioned, I jokingly say, get your own documents in a row and it's contagious because if I get my documents in a row, and again, this is the tool I use. I've renamed mine Power of Preparation. I give it out for free. I call it Power of Preparation because it used to be called 25 Documents You Need Before You Die. And during COVID, I renamed it because it sounded a little tone deaf. Whatever tool, you go on Amazon, under $30, you can find 20 different ones out there. Some of them are called, if you just search Life Organizer, you'll find a whole bunch of tools. So they're called Peace of Mind Planner, End of Life Planner, Information My Family Needs, and one, as we've joked about, sorry, it's your problem. Now I'm dead,
Oh,
so
wow.
like,
That's
good luck. So if you get something started and it's just, here's the basics, and then you just share, hey, I just want to let you know, I put together some information in my safe, but I am a super big advocate of this is my handy dandy desk reference. I'm leaving it in my office. It's going to reference what's in my safe. It's going to reference what's on my computer. You got to get into my safe to find the secret, breaking under glass passwords to get into my computer, or my phone. But, you got to trust, hopefully there's one person in your life that you can trust with that information. I also, that way, if you are the example, it's easy to go, I'm doing this. Would you be willing to do this too? So if we can reciprocate, right?
Yes.
The other example is use a life event as a launching pad. So whether it's the Pope passing or somebody in your family passes, start that conversation with, hey, Pop, um, you know, Joe Blow down the street passed away. I understand, it's been tough for his family to get things in order. What if I bring dinner over next week and we just look at your important papers over dinner? Would you be okay with that? And it's easier to start with, can we look at your life insurance or something that they're proud of than starting with, did you have a plot? That's that's not where to start. But yes, if you can start with, hey, I wanted to look over that, and it can evolve to, what you really need is, I need all the information about your social security. I need some of this basic information because you're healthy right now, but what if you get sick and I need to step in, right? So it's not just end of life. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, and I think we have to just be honest about trustworthy relationships. And so, if there's any trust issues, because we know that elders are financially abused, that you don't have to give them all the keys to the kingdom. You know where they are, they can access that. You've identified them as somebody in your power of attorney documents, but just also a word of caution, if there is nobody that you trust, then just realize that I did a segment on trust. Michelle referenced that while we were talking a few minutes ago, and felt like I did a good job of understanding that and explaining that. And because we're going to hit a stopping point in the process. And so if we don't have relationships, and especially trustworthy relationships, we want to move forward. And you can always name a trust department as a successor trustee. But this young lady in one of my networking meetings last week shared that her mother, this is the way she started the conversation. Hey, by the way, you're my power of attorney. Here's my documents. And I just had these done with my lawyer, and the daughter happens to be a real estate agent, a pretty successful, very knowledgeable, has some longevity in the industry. And she's like, oh boy, this is going to cause relational difficulties with my brother and my sister, and we need to get some clarity on that. So back to the drawing board they're going to go. So that was the way that conversation started. And I know that I have an out-of-town child and two local. And so, sometimes going over for dinner isn't possible, but thankfully, due to FaceTime and other ways, that you can do it. And I really value what you said about starting the conversation with, this is, what we have lined out. This is where you're going to find this. It's in my office. It's on my desk. You know that I keep a safe. That safe is located X. And that doesn't sound very intimidating. And I know it's hard as an adult child, a young child, you wouldn't even be having that conversation with. But
Right.
even as adult children, you don't want to talk to your parents about their mortality. So I know that even in our documents, it says what I've already prearranged. So you don't even really have to talk about that. Just say it's
Right.
prearranged and it's already in my documents, and there it is. And honestly, I will tell you that, and maybe you've experienced this too. Doesn't that help to relieve a lot of unknown stress that you didn't even really realize? And
Yeah, peace of mind with getting organized is one of the best benefits. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, and so we were really thankful when my husband's mother had done all the preparation and we showed up for the services, but everything had been chosen. And it just really helped with family relationships. There had already been a dollar amount assigned. So yeah, just more
Yes.
detail on what you're
Yes.
trying to get us to do. So softballs, right? The little fluffy ones. And then you can start with the next, go a size down and a size down, and then get the job done, right?
And I will say, like, one of the things you mentioned is let's just use medical power of attorney since we mentioned that. So you've named somebody to be medical power of attorney, or they've named you, or you're talking to somebody that you're like, hey, I'd really like you to get your documents in order, right? Ducks in a row. And they're like, oh, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, right? Everybody's good. Everybody's good.
Everybody's
So,
good.
and so the question I ask, maybe I'm a little more aggressive in my older age, but I'll say, oh, you're good. So, you know, you're out 50 miles from home, you're in an accident, somebody needs to come make decisions for you. They're going to show up with the power of attorney document in hand. Great. I'm glad to hear that. And they'll be like, no, it's in my safe at home. Oh, so they're going to be here. They're going to get halfway here, realize they don't have the power of attorney. They're going to drive home, get it, or they're going to have call somebody, have them fax it. Oh, do they have a fax machine anymore? No. So like I'm giving them all these scenarios to think it through. So here's my tip of the day. If anybody remembers one thing, if you have
Okay.
an iPhone, there's a notes icon. You can hold it and scan documents. Do you know that? You hold the
Yes.
button, you can scan documents. So on my iPhone, I have a folder called POA, and it's got more than POAs, but I scan mine, my husband's, my mother-in-law's, my other, my mom's, everybody's POAs are in there. So if anybody has to go to the hospital, everybody can just go to the hospital. I've got everybody's POAs. I can just fire them off, and they're all on my phone. If people are like, I'm not tech savvy, no problem. I also have copies of POAs in everybody's glove box who's of a certain age and doesn't want them on their phone. So if that way they're in their car, the POAs are already in the glove box along with their, registration of their cars and everything, because that way, if they drove their car to the hospital or somebody else goes, we can actually just run to the parking lot and grab it if we don't have it. So those are the two tips I actually just like. You've already gotten the legal document in place, whether you use the Missouri bar or if there's a template that you can use, or you've paid somebody to prepare it for you. Leaving it at home in the safe doesn't do you any good at point of need, right? So if you can make an electronic copy and have it with you, and the person who's going to serve as that person for you, make sure they also have it. So in times of crisis, you can all show up and get to you as fast as possible and have it handy.
That is a big pro tip. I love that. And if you don't know what she's talking about, I want you to rewind and listen to that again because that's huge and she's absolutely right. Um there are people in our profession that are money managers and I know that my sister-in-law had to manage her uncle's estate, and I know that another friend of mine was called suddenly to take her brother in hand because he had dementia, and due to a strained relationship, they weren't close. She didn't know what was going on, and the hospital told her there had been some financial abuse. It used to be that everything came to the house, right, Michelle? The bank statements, the brokerage statements, but the digital age has changed all that. What do we do in that instance? How can you help us get prepared, or what should we know about the digital documents? What's the best
Great
way to
question.
figure
Yes.
that out?
It is difficult because even if you do have all the right things in place, let's just say you have power of attorney and you have to step in and turn off somebody's utilities or turn on some utilities, you need the power of attorney, you need the account number. Sometimes you even need a PIN number in addition to that, or they're going to send a ding, like a code to their phone.
Right.
So you need multiple steps to get all of this done. So For a certain generation or younger, there might be access to like password vaults, right? It's where you purchase a password vault and it's an overlay and it controls all of your passwords, and that can be shared. Like I can create my own password vault and share it to my kids in the event, that they need to use it. But that's not for everybody because some people just aren't at that level of, feeling secure about apps, and then other people aren't that tech savvy.
Correct. And some
So,
people just like paper.
yes.
Some people
So,
just like
yes.
paper. They like to hold things. It's like
Yeah.
it just feels good. Paper feels good.
Yeah. And some of my clients are like, well, my bank's charging me $3 a month for paper. And I'm like, pay it, pay it. If that makes you comfortable, pay it. Ask them to waive a certain amount. But at the end of the day, if it makes you feel comfortable, pay it. I don't, it's just the cost of doing business like that anymore. It's just part of
Right.
life.
Right.
So if they are, there's still the old-fashioned address book that actually is a password book. That's my first choice. So again, keep it in the safe, keep it somewhere secure. You don't want to leave it out. You don't want to travel with it, but it is like the first choice. But it has to be maintained because a lot of times we will have to reset passwords. So every time you reset a password, you do have to update the book. So I say use pencil, just like we used to use in the old-fashioned address book, right? So that's my first choice. If you use an organizer like this one specifically, I've changed because it now has the 3-hole punch. So I do actually have people put a copy of their utility bills in there, and then they can write the, codes and everything in there, because even though people use this to get organized and leave it as a desk reference, they are typically the ones most often referencing it because it's handy.
Yes.
So they will keep it up typically, but it is a big challenge. And I don't, some people use a spreadsheet. Again, that is on the computer that people can't get into to get to the spreadsheet.
Right.
So I do typically say, if at least somewhere you have to have how to access your phone and or computer outside of your phone and or computer if you're going to have a spreadsheet. And
Yes. So, and then where are, if you don't do that, how is somebody going to know where your brokerage information is? And and where do you bank? I mean, it's just so simple. It's crazy, but it's the stuff that we don't think about that's probably going to trip us up. And so, in my sister-in-law's case, she had to wait for everything to start coming in through the mail, or somebody to start yelling about a bill that wasn't paid, and
Mhm.
so it wasn't easy. But listening to that experience really helped me to rethink what I needed to put in place so that it wasn't going to be a nightmare to sort things out. My mother lived with me for 3 years. So after my father died, I said, I want everything in one spot. And she was the legal secretary. So she was on top of her stuff and I knew where things were. But even so, I just I kept it in a file, and I thought, and if something happens, I just pray that I have what I need, and I did. That is good. Sometimes I had to prove things to other people that it was paid, and some people are not very happy about giving money at the end of life. In other words, there were accounts that really made it hard to close out and to receive the funds that were left in that account. So I don't think you can be over prepared in this situation. So the digital age has complicated this. And so you want your power of attorney to have access to that. And then you have to get a vault. Like you said, you have to have someplace where it is safe for you to keep it. So you have referenced this workbook that you renamed. And I know that sometimes you do workshops for people, widows, widowers, professionals, so that they can get themselves organized. So, what's this? What do you teach at the workshop, and what are some of the goals achieved when people are utilizing your new tool?
So the workshop came about because I had been giving this book out for many years, and I would always ask, how's it going, Linda? What page are you on? How many pages you have done?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on that,
Did
you
you give
know."
that to me?
Yeah,
When did you? I don't know
it's on my
if I have
to-do list. Yeah, it's on my to-do list. I'm gonna get right on that.
it.
So
Yes.
I'm like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna schedule an hour and a half to 2 hours, and actually, instead of me just handing it to you, we're going to actually have you bring your laptop, and we're going to work together in a room. So the room has like 20 to 30 tables, so couples can sit together or families can sit together, and let's say me and my husband are together. Like, hey, look up your open enrollment at the end of the year. How much life insurance do you have? Blah, 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 blah. I'm typing it into I'm writing it into the book, or, putting it in, and he's looking it up. I'm putting it in. So it's going fast, right? Because, it's just time. All the information exists. We're not creating any
Right.
information. We're just
Right.
collecting it and putting it into one place. So that's the idea. There's some pages that we don't need printouts. We just need to collect information. And so that's the workshop. It's really, I do about 15-minute chit chat up front for people who haven't experienced like what the book is. And we actually just make time to put the information together in one spot. It's not going to get done in an hour and a half, but it's a good, leap into a couple pages of the book that we can feel good and get some momentum. So that's what the workshop is.
And I love that because once you have the momentum, you feel like, oh, I'm empowered. I can do this. All I need to do is allocate the time. So that's wonderful. And like you said, the information's there. Especially if you wrote down your password, shouldn't be too much trouble. But again, life and stuff. So, Michelle, how can people get a hold of you? And tell me how many states you're able to practice in.
So I'm currently in 14 states, and don't ask me to list them.
No, that's okay.
But the easiest thing to just do is call my office. So it's Michelle Perry at Triad Financial Group. My phone number is 314-392-6807. I'll repeat that, 314-392-6807. I am on LinkedIn, so it's Michelle Perry at Triad Financial Group. And then my email is kind of long, but it's Michelle, Michelle, at Triad, financialgroup.net.
Perfect. And I'm going to put those in the show notes too for people so that you have her contact information. So, Michelle, at the end of every podcast, I talk about a caregiver tip because it's not easy being a care partner for someone. And I was wondering if you had something that you would share with us today.
I do. And it's just rounding it out on this topic, right? So my kids are grown, they're adults now, but they joke that they'd rather have a teacher or a doctor to be their parent because my gifts are around this and around being financially sound growing up. So each of my kids have a safe already, and my oldest is 25 years old. My caregiver tip is get your house in order. You will have peace of mind. That's the greatest gift to yourself. But then it will be contagious because you'll be like, you'll just want to share how proud you are of your own getting your ducks in a row. And
It's true.
then you will be gifting that to all these other people that you're bragging about how your ducks are in a row and how this peace of mind has just relieved you of all the stress. And then you can share that valuable gift with others.
It's so important because families can be really torn apart during this time of grief and when you've done your best to pre-plan and to prepare, you're really hoping to preserve those relationships and to not cause undue stress. So it's good to have those conversations. And one thing that we have done as well is just on the anniversary of when we created our trust documents, we look it over and we say, did we get rid of anything? Should we have added something this year? Does it all look like it's in order? And it's simple. It's a 1-year tune-up. But having Michelle's, what did you call it? What's the name of your workbook?
Power of preparation.
The power of preparation. So if they reach out to you, Michelle, is that something that they might be able to get from you?
Absolutely.
And if you're local to the St. Louis area, then you can find out when her next workshop is, because I know that my listeners are going to want to connect with you.
Yep, June 10th, I think, is the next one. June 10th.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle, I thank you so much for being here today and for going above and beyond for your clients and considering what your clients needed at that particular time and how to deliver what they needed, because that says a lot about you as a person. And it just reminds me that part of what you do is help people achieve the financial stability and security so that they can live a meaningful and purpose-filled life. So listeners, if you have a passion and you have strengths, lean into those and see where that takes you. And again, thank you all for listening to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers. Thank you for joining me today. Please remember that this podcast is intended as education and not advice. Don't forget to share this podcast with family, friends, or colleagues who want to learn how to age in place, but also share this with those who find themselves in crisis mode. Please go to my website, seniorsupportstrategies.com, for more information. When you subscribe to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers, you gain access to premium content and professional tips on creating your own Aging in Place roadmap. As always, I value the time you spend with me.